Good afternoon, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here today, especially here in Marrakesh, Morocco, given that Morocco is a country that means a lot to our company, ACWA Power, given that we've been given the opportunity to be part of an extraordinary adventure, which we'll give you a little bit more details about, and the fact that, let's say, there is nothing better than being back home, I would say. So let's say that the talk that I'll be sharing with you right now, obviously I'll be addressing one of the usual suspects and the key, I would say, driver of the greenhouse gases emissions, which is the power generation, which represents a little bit more than a third of the CO2 emissions today. And but obviously, I would say that power generation is part of the solution to building a sustainable future. Because obviously, to build the future, you need to provide the energy to support the social and economic growth of the countries, especially in the emerging countries. But at the same time, I mean, part of the equation is to make it sustainable, and of course, decarbonize the power generation system. So I'll give you a very brief introduction about who is ACWA Power, so that you understand a little bit the perspective in which I will be, presenting the approach. And so effectively, ACWA Power is a developer, investor, and operator in the power generation industry, as well as the seawater desalination. So we are a GCC-based company headquartered in Saudi Arabia, and since then we have grown into, operating in more than 11 countries around the GCC area, in North Africa, the southern part of Africa, as well as Southeast Asia. We operate today a portfolio of over 23 gigawatts of power generation assets, covering a wide span of technologies from the conventional side as well as from the renewable side. So as of today, we have 10% of our installed capacity, which is based off of renewables, and we have the ambition to increase that to 15% in the coming years. We operate as well significant capacity of seawater desalination, more than 2.5 million cubic meters per day. Obviously, this is one of the key, key aspects, especially in the area where we operate, the water supply. This, give or take, represents something like $33 billion of investment. So in terms of solar power, as of today, we are the proud developer of one of the largest solar complexes in the world, which is being effectively implemented here in Morocco, in the city of Ouarzazate. This is driven by of course, the Noor solar plan that is being implemented by the government of Morocco, and we have been selected through a number of tenders to be the developer, investor, and the operator of those assets, which as of today in Ouarzazate represent more than 500 megawatts of solar power generation based on concentrated solar power technology, which has a specific feature that allows it to build in storage and dispatch 100% solar power in the middle of the night. And that's one of the key achievements of this project is this, and this is addressing one of the key concerns, obviously, of the emerging countries, is to address the peak hour generation in the evening when people come back home. Everyone turns on the lights, but the light needs to be there and needs to be clean. So that's a way to do it. So what's the challenge in relation to power generation? Obviously, we need to address the demand. So if you look at the predictions especially from the International Energy Agency, the expectation is that the demand will double by 2035 to up to 26,000 terawatt hours. So this means that we will install already by then more power generation capacity that we have already as of today worldwide. So obviously this is a major challenge to be addressed, because this power needs to be affordable, because this is one of the key drivers to support the economic development, especially in emerging market, and it needs to be clean, because with over 1/3 of the carbon emissions driven by power generation, if we double the power generation capacity by 2035 and we keep it as it is today, I leave it to you to do the math and what would be the impact in terms of carbon emissions. So in light of this, obviously there have been obviously commitments from the global community, especially to the Paris Agreement that has been ratified now, into decarbonizing the power sector. That would represent, give or take, $12 trillion of investment and which is a huge figure, and against the business as usual case, I would say, where we're not decarbonizing, this represents more or less a $5 trillion gap of investment that needs to be brought. This is the challenge. Is there a solution today? Well, our colleague has given part of the answer already. So yes, indeed. So as of today, we estimate that without any subsidies, there is already a potential to reach up to 60% of the power generation by 2040 to be carbon-free. And the rationale behind is that renewable energy technology today has reached levels in terms of economics that are unbeatable. And how the private sector has contributed to that, there are a number of reasons, but I would like to maybe give you a small story in relation to that, which is part of the, let's say, the pride of ACWA Power. So back in 2014, let's say 2013, that's when the actual tender was effectively floated. So the Emirate of Dubai in 2013 had a target by 2020 to install 1 gigawatt of solar power in the Emirate. So they started to implement the vision by 100 megawatt tender. By the time the tenders were opened and submitted, so ACWA Power submitted the lowest tariff, which happened to be the world record for solar PV on an unsubsidized basis. And then when they opened the envelope, they realized a number of things. First of all, it was cheaper than and beyond their expectations of how low the cost was. That's the first thing. Secondly, this was cheaper than any other conventional power sources during the day, even cheaper than gas in the Middle East. Second, what happened? First of all, they doubled the capacity that they wanted to tender. Please, give me twice as more. And fourth, what happened is that they increased their target from 1 gigawatt to 5 gigawatts to be installed by 2020, having realized the potential of solar power, especially in the MENA region. So what are the drivers behind these amazing world records that are being achieved currently in solar and in wind as well? So first of all, there's technology development. Obviously, given the volumes that were, I would say, procured and afforded to the private sector, thanks to public policy, especially in countries like in Europe, the US and China, this of course offered enough volumes to allow the private sector to improve and improve the technologies and make it more affordable. Obviously, having access to cheap and affordable finance. The renewable technologies are capital-intensive technologies, so in effect, one of the core impact on the cost of electricity is the cost of financing. And finally, people are realizing that we have an amazing, I would say, potential in terms of renewable energy resources. In the MENA region, I mean, effectively, most of the countries can reach over 3,000 of full load hours using solar technologies, and this is available as of today. In terms of wind, recently in Morocco, again, another world record, less than 3 cents per kilowatt hour achieved with wind. And this, of course, thanks to technology. Technology is the same available all around the world, but this is as well thanks to having amazing wind resource in the southern part of Morocco, reaching capacity factors beyond 65%. So in effect, the 65% of the time, the wind turbine is producing power thanks to the available resource, and this without any support. And this was one of the drivers to achieve such low costs. So the solution is there, but it doesn't get us yet to achieving the targets. If we look at the MENA region, the electricity demand over the up to 2030 will increase by more than 7% per annum. So this is more than twice as more the overall, the global demand growth rate. Obviously, we talked already about the funding gap that is created around the pledge to decarbonize the power sector. So how do we address that? So we need to leverage obviously the financing capabilities from the private sector. Money is available, so money is not an issue. The issue is how to make sure that that money gets where it's supposed to be. And in order to achieve that, there are a number of, I would say, of conditions to allow the private sector, obviously, to invest in sustainable energy forms of power generation. So one of the models that have been widely implemented so far in the power generation system, especially in the MENA region, is the public-private partnerships. And again, the new Ouarzazate solar complex I was referring to in the southern part of Morocco was implemented following that structure. So with using partly the support from the government and the strong involvement from the private sector to achieve very competitive rates and reliable power generation. So obviously this starts with regulation, providing the right regulation, the right investment frameworks to make it attractive for international investors to come and invest in those type of projects in those given countries. Having a long-term and clear renewable policy in terms of what are the targets to be implemented in the country, and sticking to those targets, because this is how you manage investors' confidence over the long term. Having a procurement process that is as transparent, as efficient as possible. The public-private partnership, the way the public tenderings, the way they are being implemented in Morocco and Dubai. The REIPP program in South Africa has proven to be a very efficient procurement process to effectively build up the renewable capacity and managing the project risk. Obviously, when you're an international developer, you come to a country that you're not familiar with, you do not know all the conditions and the environmental conditions of the project, so you need to be taken by the hand, I would say, to be able to get comfortable with the risk allocation of the project and provide an as competitive as possible financing and technology solution. And this is where the public sector needs and can step up in effect by providing the right, I would say, environment, procuring the land, for example, which is usually something that is very problematic, evaluating the environmental conditions of the project site, and sharing that openly with the investors that are coming to participate to such tenders, and again. Either in Dubai, where records are falling one after the other from solar power. Now we are below 3 cents, we're at 2.4 cents, and we don't know in the next 2 years which levels we will reach again. This is where the public sector, has stepped up and has offered all of the environment to allow the private players, to compete on an open basis, and I would say providing the best that they can provide in achieving very competitive tariffs. And finally, the financing. Again, it comes financing. So how to make it competitive? Because the cost of financing, it directly impacts the cost of the power. So this is, of course, by providing, if required and if available, government guarantees in relation to the projects, in relation to the financing that is being made available, and a number of other conditions that allow to get the financing as competitive as possible. So obviously, as a power generation player, the sustainability of the future lies, for us in terms of focus on on establishing a clean and affordable energy supply to match the demand that is growing at paces that have not been seen in the past. But of course we have, and this is the opportunity that is given to the private sector. But at the same time, we have duties as as corporations, towards our environment, toward the society, into I would say raising the awareness around the sustainability of what we're doing, and this comes and that duty needs to be I would say in effect. We need to be accountable for such duties by disclosing information. Disclosing information to the public, to our workers, in order to allow them to know in which work environment they are evolving and to what extent they are creating an impact, a positive impact on their own environment by joining our I would say our corporation. This is about disclosing information to our investors. Investors today, they are not only driven by the performance from a financial perspective of their investment, but they are driven as well by the performance from a sustainable perspective of their own investment. And this is by communicating on our project. This is how we would manage to leverage the required financing, I would say, to finance the energy transition. And of course, towards society, and the local communities where we evolve and where we invest. So here I'd like to share a little bit of our experience in Morocco, especially in the case of our project that we have in Ouarzazate. So obviously, I mean, at the heart of our, I would say, of our strategy is of course to ensure that we are properly integrated into the communities where we invest. And the best way to achieve that is, of course, to hire people from the local communities that are surrounding our assets and training them to allow them to participate either during the construction phase or during the operational phase, investing in local infrastructure and investing in the skills. And all of this is contributing to providing equal opportunities to the communities that are surrounding our projects. And this this creates the environment that that in effect would avoid things like people moving from their communities to overly populated urban areas, which are obviously one of the core I would say core issues in generating an unsustainable way of using energy and transportation and a lot of other aspects. So in the case of Ouarzazate, that's maybe beyond the project itself. That's one where our pride relies mostly. I mean, we have been on the side of developing the solar park. Sorry. Yeah. So on the side of developing the solar park, we have of course we've tried to develop projects with the local communities, which have directly impacted on a material basis their daily life. And this includes obviously training some skilled workers, especially welders, for example, to take part in the overall construction of this very large infrastructure project. Creating an arts and crafts collective, for the local people to be able to leverage their traditional, I would say, competencies and make them marketable and to help them generate more revenues. Provide and bring new methods for agriculture, for example, to allow them to increase their productivity and raise their revenues. Thank you.